The NFL is now part owner of ESPN. Fubo and Hulu+Live have combined. YouTube's 2025 revenue hit $60 billion, with 2/3 coming from ads, and Peacock's losses jumped. Listen on.
Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News. And, of course, that was Colin Dixon from In-Screen Media there at the beginning. Colin, going to be watching the game on Sunday?
Well, you must be super happy. They made it. The Patriots made it. They were able to do this without the assistance of Tom Brady for the first time in a long time. Be a big game there against Seattle.
Yeah, we've overachieved already, so we'll just see if the overachievement run can continue here. But no doubt, a lot of excitement here in New England.
Yeah, I'm sure. And NFL is going to feature quite handily today in our podcast. But before we get to the NFL, I just wanted to give our listeners a little bit of an update. I don't know if they remember or if you remember, but I angrily left Google TV after Google started putting a lot of ads in the TV interface, which I found really disruptive. And I turned to, drum roll, Apple TV. And I got to tell you, I've really been won over. The interface is pretty quirky. And I had the previous version of Apple TV with that wacky remote. That's the thing I like least about the interface. But it's really working out pretty well for me. It's one of the things I love particularly is it is really fast. I use Paramount Plus a lot. And it loads faster on Apple TV than any other device I have in my house, and I have a bunch. So, yeah, I've been won over, I think, by Apple TV.
Those of us who know your antipathy for Apple over the years, Colin, are still picking our jaws up off of the floor here.
Indeed. But anyway, enough about that. Let's get to the NFL. Oh my goodness, there's been some movements this week which just a few years ago I think we wouldn't have believed.
Well, let's start with the big, we'll get to that in a second, but let's just start. The big thing is that the NFL-ESPN deal has now closed. That was announced for a few months back. Big pieces here are that NFL is now going to own 10% of ESPN, and ESPN is going to take over the NFL Network and NFL Red Zone and NFL Fantasy and integrate those products with ESPN with their direct-to-consumer model. So this is a big deal, especially as we get into the renewal season, which we'll talk about in just a second, but also really underscores how key NFL is to ESPN's business and joins these two big organizations. ESPN, I think, is valued at $30 billion under the 10% equity deal, so $3 billion. And, well, that's a lot more than any other cable network is valued at these days. So first we have that. Second is news that NFL, recognizing its record ratings this season, believes that the media deals that still run for another 4 or 5 years should be renegotiated, and actually more than 4 or 5 years. I think they run like another, or they run into the early 2030s. Is that right, Colin? I can't remember. I think
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So we're probably talking 6-7 years, and NFL is now saying that they want to go back to their media partners and renegotiate those deals, partially because of how big the NBA's deal was that was announced last year, and also because, as I just say, they've had record ratings across all of their various packages. NFL had a press release last month that average regular season viewership was 18.7 million this year. That was the highest since 1988. But all of the packages had records this year, and also this past season, the highest ever rated game was on as well. So that all says to the NFL folks that they think there's more value that they can capture. And the reality is the media companies, given how important NFL has become to their businesses, are probably going to be willing to engage in these conversations well before the deadline. So NFL is really, really flexing its muscles.
They are, and it reminds me just a few years ago how they were really struggling. They were seeing their audiences declining year over year. And so this is a pretty remarkable turnaround. The interesting thing I think they threw out in one of the articles in the New York Times, I think it was, that threw out that the number of minutes consumed on the top game exceeded the number of minutes spent watching Stranger Things on Netflix for a month, which was a pretty remarkable figure, particularly when you're thinking about the advertising, right? Because wherever you're going to advertise, if you want to reach an audience, well, if your audience is in the target for NFL games, you're going to definitely pick that rather than a Stranger Things. So this is remarkable. I remember that their current deal, they said that there was an out, I think, at 7 years where either party could ask to renegotiate, but they're pulling the trigger at least 2 years, maybe 3 years early here. And I guess if you're a partner of theirs, do you have much choice? Can you just dig your heels in and say no? Because at the end, when they can renegotiate, they have so many options other than any individual licensee, right? You mentioned their interest in ESPN. They could give ESPN more rights. Amazon has also had a fantastic season with Thursday night. I'm sure Amazon will be delighted to take a bigger chunk. And, well, Netflix has also done extremely well on Christmas Day. So they really have a lot of options now where they can go. And I didn't even mention YouTube TV and YouTube, rather, with NFL Sunday Ticket. So many options. I got a feeling that when they come knocking to renegotiate, there's really no option but for the existing licensees to pay up.
Right. And also, reminder that NFL has been very adept at creating new packages for their games. And to your point, that's where I think YouTube really becomes an interesting player here, because they did that international game this year. I think it was from Brazil that did really well for them. And I think we covered that on a podcast some time ago, but no doubt that proved to YouTube that with their global audience that NFL would be very valuable to them. So yeah, you're right. Netflix, YouTube, Amazon, Peacock, there are all these new players in the mix now that have realized the value of NFL. So yeah, I think they're in a position to actually renegotiate these deals early.
They are definitely in the catbird seat, I think. So, but anyway, with that, let's move on to the next topic here. And I wanted to talk about Fubo. And now, Fubo is now owned by Disney, majority owned by Disney. But it's still public company, a separate public company. It's listed as a separate stock. This is the first quarter that Fubo has reported since the purchase closed and the ownership was completed. And some really interesting things showed up in their results, Will, which I wanted to share. The first is the first is a simple one. They switched to financial quarters to be matched with Disney. So rather than doing Q4 2025, they're listing it as Q1 2026. So that's a little bit confusing, but other than that, they're now that aligns them with how Disney reports its financial numbers. The results looked kind of good. Well, they seemed kind of good, but if you read between the lines, maybe they weren't quite so good as they listed. They said, first of all, that Fubo subs have decreased just slightly from the previous quarter. They said 6.3 million one year earlier, rather, to 6.2 million. So that's a small decrease. But this is probably, if you're following Fubo at all, this has probably got your eyes wide open, because the last time Fubo reported, they reported that they had 1.676 million subscribers. So what's going on here? Well, basically, they are now reporting Hulu+Live subs in Fubo results. So Disney's no longer reporting them. They are being reported by Fubo. And they're not breaking out each service separately, but I can tell you how they're doing. And that is, they're doing pretty much exactly the way they were before, because both Hulu+Live and Fubo have been really flat for at least the last year. And they continue to be flat in terms of subscriber growth. So basically that's what's going on here. Although they didn't report them separately, it's pretty clear that there's no growth in those businesses, at least from the point of view of subscribers. And it's pretty disappointing because this is the fourth quarter. You'd expect a little bounce in the fourth quarter because people are staying in because it's winter. So that's one thing. The second thing is that some revenue, and I don't think all of Hulu+Live revenue, but some of that revenue has also transferred onto Fubo's books. This was kind of confusing because Disney's SVOD revenue decreased from a reported $6 billion last quarter. That's the quarter ending 12/28/2024 to $5.3 billion. It decreased from $6 billion to $5.3 billion. That's down $0.7 billion. And they just reported $4.8 billion for 12/28/2024. That's $1.2 billion difference. So basically it looks like that $1.2 billion, the subscription revenue here, has shifted to Fubo because Fubo reported $1.55 billion last quarter and $1.1 billion 1 year earlier. But it also looks like the advertising revenue generated by Hulu+Live did not transfer, that's staying part of Disney, which is a little bit confusing. I find it very confusing anyway. And this really comes to the real point here is I continue to be really confused about this relationship between Disney and Hulu+Live and Fubo. It really does look like this was a sort of transfer that has not really helped Fubo at all. There is, I suppose, they're in a better negotiating position with the broadcasters because they've got, rather than negotiating for 1.7 million, they're negotiating for 6.2 million. That does help, I guess, with margins going forward, but it isn't helping at all with growth. And basically, if you look at the loss that Fubo made 1 year ago, it's pretty much the same as it made in the last quarter of 40 million. So Fubo reported a net loss in Q4 of 2024 of 40 million. And the net loss last quarter, including all of this subscription revenue from Hulu+Live, is 40 million again. Well, they said 38 million, but it's pretty much not changed, right? So it sounds like Disney handed Fubo a break-even business in Hulu+Live. But here's the really confusing thing for me, Will. I don't know what the hell Fubo is doing apart from negotiating the contracts for the TV channels. I queried back and forth with Fubo's publicity department, and basically they told me currently Fubo isn't managing any parts of Hulu+Live, all of that, including the client, including, all of the advertising, including everything, all of the DVR features and all of that is all still managed by Disney. So I don't know how the hell Fubo is reporting those subscribers as part of its business. It's very, very confusing.
I hear you loud and clear, Colin. I have not been clear at all on the specifics of that Fubo Disney deal. In fact, when it was first announced, there really wasn't, as best I recall, not even a great rationale for why they were doing it. There had been this legal thing back and forth between Fubo and Disney, but I'm not sure I understood how settling that was going to warrant this deal now, as you say, with Hulu Plus basically being spun into Fubo, what the financial benefit of that is. As far as negotiating better rates, it seems like Disney's already in the best position it can be in with ESPN. Why do they need to have Fubo in there? So I don't really understand it at all.
I don't get it either, and it doesn't look like we're going to get any clarity anytime soon. David Gandler was talking about in the earnings call how these new results show why this is such a great deal, why it works so well. David, I don't get it, so I don't see it at all.
May have to have David back on, but let's keep moving along, Colin, because we want to be mindful of time here. So our next story, we had Alphabet reporting Q4 earnings this week, and another solid quarter for YouTube. You know, that's been a run that YouTube has been on now. It looks like in Q4 of 25, they reported $11.4 billion just in ad revenue. If you total up the ad revenue for the 4 quarters of 2025, it looks like they did a little over $40 billion in ad revenue in 25. That's a record for sure. First time, I believe, that Alphabet has reported YouTube's full annual revenues. So that's across the advertising side, but also all the subscription services. Reported that at $60 billion for the full year. Said that now this 325 million paid subscriptions across consumer services. That includes both Google One and also the YouTube Premium services. YouTube Premium, there's Sunday Ticket, there's YouTube TV. All of that subscription revenue seems to add up to around $20 billion in 2025. So a third of YouTube's revenue now coming from subscriptions, 2/3 of it now coming from advertising, $60 billion. That $60 billion is second in all in the entertainment universe, second only to Disney, and well ahead of Netflix. So YouTube is a monster business. We've talked about this many times in the past, but this disclosure of the $60 billion for the first time just gives us all a sense of just how gigantic it is.
It really does, Will. And the engine that continues to power YouTube, of course, is the creator community. And Neil Mohan, who's the CEO of YouTube, and all of his lieutenants, they just really stay laser focused on making the creators as productive as possible. Neil Mohan shared some information in his 2026 letter to the community outlining the priorities, and he's putting a lot of focus on AI tools. They released a bunch of AI tools last year for creators, and he said that they've been embraced. Already 1 million channels used YouTube's AI tools in daily. That's incredible, in December 2025. And that is pretty amazing. YouTube Shorts is also doing extremely well, 200 billion daily views according to Mohan. So really, they're saying that's the key to their success. They know that they need to keep the creator community productive, happy, and competitive. One of the key areas that they're competing with, of course, is on television today, and they continue to do extremely well there. So allowing the creators to create better quality content, more appropriate for television, that's really a key focus as well, and these AI tools help with that. So boy, it's a behemoth, and I don't see any slowing of this juggernaut.
Yeah, just to add one other thing that I thought was interesting, 700 million hours of podcast content consumed in October 2025. That was up 70% over the prior year. I think that YouTube has done more than any other entity in terms of transforming what we think of as podcasts, audio only, to now being video as well. And that's another source of valuable content, as we've seen with Spotify, Netflix, others that are now incorporating video podcast content into their lineup. So But I think YouTube is in a prime position to win in that space as well.
Yeah, I do too. But maybe we should move on to our next topic, which is Peacock. We've talked a lot about Peacock in 2025, and I have a feeling we're going to continue to focus a little bit on it in 2026. Ostensibly, Q4 was a pretty good quarter for the service. It added 3 million subscribers, which is about 7.5-8% increase over the 41 million that it finished Q3 with. And that, I think, is primarily due to the NBA coming to Peacock. Of course, NBCU, Comcast bought a large chunk of NBA games for $2.5 billion a year last year. And they are now showing up in Peacock, which is great. And it does seem to have had some impact with them gaining this 3 million subscribers. Well, but I got to tell you, looking at the numbers, this is not enough. They are going to have to do way more than this. Basically, what we saw was that they likely added at most 100 million in subscription revenue for the quarter. That's just simply taking 3 million and multiplying by, what is it, 12? I think it's $12 a month now for the entry level package. That gets you 100 million in subscription revenue, plus some of the ad revenue, of course, will add on to that too. They also had this enormous 30% price increase in August in advance of NBA showing up in Peacock to offset the cost. And so that allowed them to claim a Q4 revenue increase of 23% over 2024. Of 300 million. So that's a pretty good increase. But as I say, this is not enough. The NBA license fees, as I said, is 2.5 billion a year. Peacock's quarterly loss, which they now getting allocated a portion of those fees, increased. And it is now the highest it's been in 2 years, 552 million loss in Q4 versus 217 million in the last quarter and 372 million 1 year ago. And really, the only place that these license fees have got to be shared out is between Peacock and NBC. We checked, and Versant didn't get any of those rights apparently passed through to it when it separated. That's where USA Sports is. This is why NBC has decided to relaunch NBC Sports, I suspect, to be able to offset some of the costs against licensing that to pay TV operators. But boy, Will, these numbers just do not seem to add up, particularly when you compare them with how well YouTube is doing without paying any of that and how well the NFL is doing. They just don't seem to add up, do they?
Completely agree, Colin. That $522 million loss, $552 million loss in this last quarter, spiking like that, when is that going to come down? given the NBA deal in place now, $2.5 billion a year, they pulled a 30% increase this past year on the price. Can't do that every year.
No,
there are only so many subscribers that are going to come in as a result of NBA. So that's an awfully big swing. I'm not sure I ever see how that is ever going to pay out for them.
Yeah, me neither. And one of the things here is that people have options that they didn't have before, right? So with Peacock, whereas you might just stay subscribed to Peacock all year, now with this big price increase, and I bet they come along with another price increase this year in 2026, people have options. They can cancel at the end of the season. Which they may not have done because there was, occasional show that they wanted to watch. There is so much other content kicking around. Why stay subscribed to Peacock a moment longer than you have to? So people will become subscribers for the season of the sport that they're interested in, or maybe they'll come in for, say, the Olympics, which are taking place this month I think they're in Italy, aren't they? They are in Italy.
Yeah, starting tomorrow.
Starting tomorrow. So there we go. Winter Sports Olympics. Maybe you'll come in for just that. People have options. They can just cancel and come back when there's something that they really want to watch. So I don't know. This looks like an awfully big nut for them to try and crack. With just Peacock and NBC. So I guess we'll see if they can survive.
We will indeed. So we've covered a lot of ground here, Colin, and I think Peacock and Fubo, all these stories we're going to be keeping on watching. NFL with the renewal. We'll see if the early renewals. We'll see how that goes. So plenty of stuff here in the world.
There is, and meanwhile, I guess I'll be cheering for the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Right, something I never thought I'd say.
There you go. Okay, well, we're all going to look forward to the game this weekend, Colin. Good chatting, great podcast this week, as always. And we'll see all our listeners again after the Super Bowl.
Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News, all rights reserved.